Hello, everyone. My name is Salil. I'm a co-founder and CEO of AdSkate, and welcome to another episode of Impressions and Chai, AdSkate's podcast series. Our guest today is David Ramirez. David is a senior marketing manager of brand and field at Tint. At Tint, he specializes in field and event marketing with end-to-end responsibility for sourcing, planning, and executing their events. He is also responsible for creative and developing special brand initiatives, including industry specific campaigns, database marketing campaigns, and marketing communication strategies. He has held a variety of different marketing positions at various organizations, including but not limited to San Japan, Scaleworks, and Battleground, Texas. So, David, welcome to Impressions and Chai. It's good to have you here.
Thanks so much. Thanks for inviting.
Perfect. And just for our listeners, where does this podcast find you today?
I am in beautiful San Antonio, Texas, where it's currently 106 degrees. So what's
Wonderful.
that, 34 Celsius?
Wow.
Very hot
Yes.
day.
I can imagine. I can imagine. But San Antonio is a beautiful place. Um, Welcome again. So I guess we can get started. So, my first question today really is about um, content creation as well as content consumption. I mean, it's just both content creation as well as content creation is exploding. The tools and ecosystems that technology platforms have made available has increased both the appetite for content consumption, as well as it has led to a whole new ecosystem, which is what we call today as creator economy. So, for the sake of our listeners, can you talk a little bit about different types of content that brands have access to today in this new world of social media and creator economy?
Absolutely. I think it's such an exciting time, especially with some of the major changes that are happening in social networks for brands to activate external content. And so, really, I like to think of content in two major buckets. You have internal content, which will be your traditional brand created narratives, public relations, internal communications, stuff that's made and driven by the brand itself. And that is really effective in very specific treatments. I think PR, I think events, I think especially if you have thought leadership, those are very powerful tools. But the fact of the matter is, people trust other people. People inherently believe that they are being misled by marketers, or they know that marketers are there to persuade someone to do something. And so, by leveraging the power of externally created content, you can really find immense gains and lots of creative opportunities. I think it's important to note that there's not just one specific monolith of externally created content. There's many, many different buckets, and it feels like every other day there's a new term or a new phrase to describe it. So I kind of like to divide it into three major buckets right now. One, you have user-generated content, and so that could be content created by people that are reviewing your brand or business, testimonials, people talking about it. Lately, there's been a slight divergence. Brands are paying people to create user generated content, which is a great way to sort of kickstart the engine if you don't have a lot of reviews or if you're a brand new brand or company. The next is influencer created content. And for those that work in influencer marketing, it goes all the way from micro and nano influencers with hundreds and thousands of followers, all the way to the macro and uber influencers, the Kardashians of the world that have, 20 and 30 million followers. And there are strategies and tactics to deploy and activate all that content between. And then, like you mentioned earlier, there are creators out there, and a lot of the time, creators are kind of in their own separate space. They're not necessarily influencers. They're not truly UGC. They are focused on the content creation process and not necessarily growing an audience, unless that audience is conducive to growing their creative content endeavors. And within those creators, they are small creators, medium creators, larger creators, and each one of them has a different flavor, a different part of the marketing funnel that they can affect and drive, and obviously different costs associated with, right? Getting your local mommy influencer or mommy blogger to activate and talk about a business is much less expensive than getting the Kim Kardashians of the world to talk about
Absolutely.
something where they're charging
Absolutely.
six figures plus to make a singular post.
Perfect. Perfect. I think that's a good overview. You like native brand content, user generated content, influencer created content, and then creators, them having their um, own piece of place, if you will, in this creator economy. um about that, so just a follow-up question: when should sort of brands go with user generated content? When should they go with influencer created content? When should they rely on creators? Do you have a standard strategy there, a guideline or a guidebook that you typically follow in that scenario?
Yeah, I think it's going to be very different by industry, and so that's sort of my non-answer to that question. Obviously, if you are active in things like fashion, beauty, retail, D2C, those spaces play really, really well with influencer content. Influencers can drive a lot of action with that, especially if you're doing things like live shopping or affiliate codes or some sort of referral program. I think everyone should have some sort of UGC element because we know for the vast majority of shoppers, whether you are buying a house, a car, a widget on Amazon, a ebook, first thing that people do when they go online is they check and see that it meets specs. And the second thing that they do is they scroll down and read the testimonials. You know, is it the right fit? Is it the right size? Is it true to life? And so that sort of UGC is always going to be incredibly powerful, especially for people that are in the e-commerce space. So my non-answer is if you are in any sort of like highly visual brands, influencers should be very near the top of the list. User-generated content is for everyone. That's why everyone has testimonials, reviews, and the UGC, natural, true UGC can take a little bit of time to sort of cultivate, right? Especially if you're a new brand right out of the gate. And then creators are kind of an interesting space. If you can find a legitimate and authentic connection to a creator, they can do amazing things for you. I think a great example is I've heard from a couple of folks, if I can just get Mr. Beast to talk about me on his podcast. And well, in theory, like, yeah, you'll probably get some traffic, but Mr. Beast serves a very specific demographic, a very specific niche. And so I think for folks that are, let's say, in the culinary world, there's a very popular creator called Binging with Babish, who has partnered with restaurant supplies and cooking supplies and recipes and cookbooks. So obviously, if you're in that space selling some sort of culinary thing, connecting with a culinary creator is going to be the right name of the game. So I think there needs to be sort of a pause before you start throwing money at any of these buckets of content creators and really think, what is the outcome that we're trying to do? The other thing I want to add is each one of these has a very specific superpower within the marketing funnel. Influencers, generally speaking, and with the exception of the mega and macro, they're going to cost you, $500,000 to activate. Influencers, especially the smaller ones, their superpower is their network. And so they are most effective deployed at the very top of the funnel. So you want them to be driving people into your funnel. And then from there, you serve them brand content. You get them hooked in with emails. You serve them social directly. You do remarketing and all the good stuff that you're supposed to do, right? You serve them programmatic ads. You connect with them along the way. When you think about creators, creators are great with that affiliate code because they see a creator using something in a video or using something in a piece of content. And so it's great for that conversion activity. With user generated content, especially true UGC, that's great for that consideration and persuasion phase of the funnel because people already know that your item is up to spec or what you do is up to spec. And so they need that little bit of information, that review from an authentic person that's going to drive them to actually add it to their shopping cart and click to convert. And so that's an often misstep that I see with brands is they say, "Oh, I've spent this much on influencers, it's not working." Well, again, their superpowers at the top of the funnel. UGC tends to be sort of middle of funnel, and then creator content tends to be really conversion focused. So if you're not deploying them in the right way, then you could waste a lot of money trying to just sort of spin your wheels and test which one of these types of content is going to be most effective for you.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. I think I'm definitely going to check out Binging with Babish. The name itself is so catchy. Perfect. So I mean, if you could expand on that piece of external content a little bit, right? Like, are there different types and channels for external content that you would prefer? YouTube versus social versus TikTok? um, um, it, it would, just like you mentioned about, you talked a little bit about how brands can leverage this content at different stages of the marketing funnel, but I just wanted to shift focus a little bit. are and see if a specific channel is more relevant to certain brands and certain stage of the funnel, or it doesn't matter. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think again, my non-answer is it depends. One of my favorite things about user-generated content compared to influencer and creator content is a lot of the time influencer and creator content is really going to be platform specific, right? This person is a Instagram influencer, this person is a blogger, this person is a Pinterest influencer, or they're a TikToker, or they're a YouTuber. And even the way we talk about these sorts of influencers and creators, we tend to qualify them with their platform, right? Mr. Beast is a YouTube creator. This person is a TikTok creator.
Yeah.
And the great part about user generated content is you can reach out and license that content relatively inexpensively, often for free. And from there, you can deploy that content in many, many different treatments. And so, one of my favorite things to see is for a brand, let's say Lowe's Hotels. They reach out to someone that stayed in one of their properties. They say, "This is a great photo you shared on Instagram. I'd love permission to use it." And that person is just an average consumer, right? They were there on vacation, they have great memories. Of course, they'd love to share that piece of content. And when the brand gets the legal rights to that content, from there, they can deliver it in paid social, in programmatic ads, in magazines and billboards, in lots of different treatments. We did a really cool project with Coca Cola a number of years back where it was the Name a Coke campaign. Everyone had their names on Coke. My legal first name is Sotero, which is a Spanish name. I didn't find it on any Coke bottles, so David was easy to find. My actual Mexican name, not so much. But Coca-Cola reached out to people on Instagram using the Tint platform and got permission to use that content. And then that Instagram content was in magazines, it was on billboards, it was on digital out of home signage, it was in their programmatic ads. And so that's the cool part about user generated content is once you license that content, it's already very authentic, it's unique in perspective, and you can put it everywhere. Now, on the creator and influencer side, I think a lot of that really depends on, again, what you're trying to sell. Is there an opportunity to activate things like shoppable social? TikTok shopping is so very hot right now. YouTube shopping live is getting lots of rollouts and additional features. On Instagram, you are 3 clicks away from buying something, which is really dangerous when I'm sitting there scrolling Instagram with a glass of wine on Friday night. And so, again, it really kind of depends on what sort of treatment you're looking for. But I do think the super or maybe superior piece of content is UGC, just because you're not necessarily limited by the platform it was created on if you can license it and then put it everywhere.
That's interesting. I mean, I like the way you mentioned like how these platforms are making it easier to get to shopping cart quickly, right, from some of the social platforms itself. And then that in the example of Coca-Cola itself shows how powerful these channels can be in terms of sort of getting your customers quickly from an interest point to checkout, if you will. So very interesting there. Now, just building on top of that Coca-Cola example, um, can you probably give a couple more examples in terms of how, or even if it's not examples, some strategies about how brands can, like Coca-Cola, leverage different sources of externally generated content for their campaigns?
Yeah, I think a lot of it starts with being really specific and explicit in your ask. Um, Brands can sometimes have issues getting people to create content, but if you don't ask for that content, if you don't make it easy, if you don't have clear hashtags, if you don't include your social handles on your packaging or on your invoices, then a lot of the time people may post that content. It just goes out into the dark of the internet and you never see it again. So, really think about the times where people are most excited. And if you've gone to a restaurant recently, especially a chain restaurant, you'll see on their little table tents, it says, leave us a review on TripAdvisor, or we need a Google review, right? The restaurants have it figured out. They say, leave us a review on this platform before you leave, and here's the QR code to scan and get it out there into the universe. And I think all brands need to be comfortable with that. Ask for that review, ask for that testimonial, ask for some sort of feedback, and also ask for permission to share it in other places. We found in our research, we released an annual report called The State of Social and User Generated Content, that if someone was already going to create a post or share a piece of content about your brand or business, half of those people are willing to change the channel that they're distributing it on if you simply ask. So if they were going to leave a Yelp review, if you ask, half of those people would switch to Google, or half of them would switch to whatever the review site or piece of content. If you say, hey, can you share this as a story instead of a post on Instagram, half of those people will switch to story. And so a lot of it's just about asking people to create that content and make it easier for them to share. Now, on the influencer and creator side, again, it's all about matching and really knowing what you're trying to do. Are you trying to build awareness? All right, we'll play with influencers, especially the smaller creators, and specifically ask for people to say, hey, go to the website, right? Giving an influencer a product level page or giving an influencer a really deep page on your website is not going to actually do anything valuable. Send someone to a top level page, send someone to your homepage, have someone talk more broadly about the brand, and have that ask be, hey, just go check out this brand. They're really cool. I like working with them. And so being really explicit, specific, and knowing what the next step is afterwards, right? Someone shares a piece of content, reach out and say thank you, even if it's automated and through a chatbot, right? And then follow up a little bit later. Hey, did you ever get that item? Hey, did this thing ever get, would you like to share a photo now that it's been delivered or you got it in the mail? Right? Hey, did you know that we have this margarita special on Wednesday? And so really kind of think of that chain of custody of the content and then what's the next step down the line. And I hate that I have to be the marketer that says this, but never forget that it is 3 times less expensive to keep and maintain a customer than it is to get a new one out of the cold. And so if you have that reciprocal relationship with people where they're sharing content and feedback about your brand and business, you're being thankful and grateful and sharing that content from them, then there's even a higher propensity for those people to be repeat customers, even in high value and high dollar industries like high end fashion and retail.
No, I think you made some powerful statements there, they're so simple, but they can have such a huge impact. And two of them, which I'd like to sort of reiterate again. One is like, just ask, be explicit in what you want, request, and you'll be surprised by how much of an impact that your simple ask can have. Whether it is asking customers to write a review, or somebody who's already posted about your brand on a particular channel, asking them to repost it somewhere else, and that can probably go a long way. So that I think was really powerful, which sometimes can be ignored. And the second thing is what I think it made a big impression on me, which was it's 3 times less expensive to retain your customer than getting a new customer, and which also is very powerful. Like, so you can do, as you said, some small things that can probably go a long way in building that deeper relationship with your customer, especially in consumer brands where there's an opportunity for brands to make that first time customer a repeat customer. So I think those two things were really powerful. Now, going a little bit deeper, right? Like, and you talked a little bit about this earlier on, but brands execute different types of campaigns with different objectives across different stages of the marketing funnel. What are some of the best practices that brands can adopt when using external content for different types of campaigns? And I know you touched upon this a little bit, but if you could expand on that a little bit, that would be great.
Yeah, I think right out of the gate, being really mindful and being aware of the laws and expectations of content creation, right? The minute that a person puts a photo into a permanent state, which could be a picture on Instagram, a photo on Facebook, a video, they own the rights to that copyright, right? So even if it is of your product or service, or even of you at an event, there is a copyright play. And as you do international work, if you're in California, you have things like CCPA. If you're in the EU, you have GDPR. And even in Mexico, Canada, Africa, like every single country in the world has some sort of data privacy rule or copyright law. And so just be really mindful that someone took the time to take photos, make the effort to take like brand content of you. And so you should be respectful to them and also protect yourself from any sort of legal liability. So I think straight out of the gate, just you know, covering your butt is a great way to do it. And then also being respectful to your customer, because you would hate to burn a bridge with a customer just because you use their photo incorrectly or miscited them or something like that. I think the next one is there is no sort of silver bullet or a magic wand that you can wave. Being mindful of things that are going on in the world, like you could have the best influencer campaign, you could have the best UGC campaign or creator campaign, but if you're launching it during the Super Bowl and trying to compete with the Super Bowl, if you're launching it during the World Cup and trying to compete with the World Cup, or if you're launching it on Christmas Day or New Year's Eve, right? Like there is a sort of meta mindfulness that has to be aware of, because these people live and operate within social media and within sort of the greater internet. And while they may still be a big creator or a big influencer or a great creator of content, there's always going to be sort of the trade winds of holidays, back to school, retail shopping, summer vacation, things like that. And so being really aware of what's going on across social and across digital, not just from a trend perspective, but from a timeline perspective, and making sure that you're activating and leveraging those if possible, or avoiding them if it's going to cause too much noise or static within your campaigns. And then
Perfect.
lastly, know that not every piece of content is going to be great. A lot of this is going to be about operating at scale. I think about an event that we did with iHeartMedia Festival. We were inside capturing content and showing it on screens and on websites. And when you have 100,000 people in an arena, all of them are Instagramming and tweeting and TikToking simultaneously. Not every picture of the stage is going to be a great photo. Not every picture of Bruno Mars is going to be wonderful. Not every selfie of someone who's been sitting there and drinking for 6 hours is going to be fantastic. And so at some point, you have to have plans in there to make it scalable, because when you have 100,000 pieces of content. Every marketer says, "I hope I get 100,000 pieces of content," until you're sitting there in a Google Drive hell trying to sort it and find the best ones to actually use. And so, really think what's the best case scenario, and how do I actually make sure that I do something with it, and not just have it live in a Google Drive for the next 6 months until I decide to delete it because I've never touched that photo again. So really thinking what's good for now, but also keeping scalability in mind for the future.
That's really powerful. Um, well, I guess that really brings me to the last part of the podcast, which I always find it fun. So I have three rapid fire questions for you that I typically ask every guest of the podcast here. Are you ready? So the first one is, can you name one or two best books that have had a major influence in you on you, whether it is professionally, personally, in all facets of life?
Yeah, I think if I had to pick one or two, number one would be Robert Cialdini's Influence.
Uh huh.
I'm a huge fan of Cialdini and all of his books. I think Influence is the best. If Robert, if you listen to this podcast, I'm sorry, the new one was okay, but but your OG is the best.
Yeah.
And just the fact that it's a great quick check when you think, okay, there's really just seven types of psychological influence in marketing and communications. And am I actually applying one of the seven or multiple of the seven to this campaign? And so every once in a while, it's good to just sort of go back to basics and reflect, like, am I doing the theoretical part of marketing correctly? And the other one I'd have to recommend is Everybody Writes by Anne Hanley. I am a huge fan of Anne. I follow her newsletter. I've got to meet her on a couple of occasions. And sometimes the writing and copywriting part of marketing can be the really scary part. And for her just to say, everybody writes, it's about just putting pen to paper or getting on the keyboard and just doing the thing and knowing that your first draft is going to be the worst draft. As someone that writes a lot of copy, writes a lot of presentations and content, yeah, I find it very reassuring that even the goddess and patron saint of content marketing, Anne herself, still has moments where she's staring at a blank screen saying, "Oh, this is awful. This is never going to be a great blog."
Oh, everybody writes. I'm going to check one that out. I've read Robert's book on influence. I love it. I think it's very very powerful. Yeah, I think it still holds ground today. Next question: what's your favorite social media platform?
Yeah, I am a huge TikTok fan. I only have 4 or 5 TikToks out there, but I probably have already been on it a couple of hours today, and after I'm off this recording, I will be on it for another couple of hours later. I find the platform so interesting. There's so much rich content out there, and once you really curate your feed, I love that I can get technical marketing content next to funny like anime videos next to pictures of like cows. I don't know how I got cows on my TikTok, but I get a lot of cattle and like animal husbandry videos, and they're just very interesting as someone who doesn't work or live or like is adjacent to that space.
Interesting. Um, and then the last question: if our listeners have to read about your work or connect with you, what is the best way to do that?
Yeah, the best place to catch me is always going to be on LinkedIn. That's where I share any upcoming speaking engagements, any events that we're hosting. We're getting ready to relaunch our roadshow at Tint, so we may be coming to a city near you, somewhere in North America. And so, linkedin.com/s David Ramirez, and I will be there. Follow me for lots of UGC influencer and content.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, David, this has been a blast. Very informative, very useful. I have some good takeaways that I'm going to walk away from today's conversation. So thanks again for being on our podcast. I really appreciate it. And for our listeners, we will be posting this up soon. So keep an eye out. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much.